Hello, and welcome to ISG's podcast, Peering Beyond the Lens. I'm your host, Ken Presti. The IT industry is trending away from doing digital in favor of being digital. Doing digital is simply a matter of adopting a tool or technology to upgrade a business process. But being digital involves transforming your company culture and organization to allow for greater maturity of operations and systems, an approach designed to yield additional benefits over time. Indeed, being digital is focused on a shift in the way you approach your business. It becomes part of how you think. Meanwhile, ISG sees a stronger emphasis towards ESG, environmental, social, and governance. In other words, how does what you're doing impact the planet and society at large? There's social justice in that direction, and it's becoming something that a company needs to address, but it's not always easy to do. ISG has a new market research report entitled Digital Business Enablement and ESG Services, which will take you down Main Street of the evolutions I just described and will also compare providers' strengths and challenges in a quadrant format that will help you get up to speed or stay up to speed. My guest today is the lead analyst on that report. With 14 years of experience across research and consulting, she's published more than 25 papers in a variety of research journals and other media dealing with digital transformation in all its forms. I want to say hello to Akhila Harinarayan. Akhila, welcome to the program. Our topic today is digital business enablement and ESG, otherwise known as environmental, social, and governance services. So digital business enablement and ESG services across the board. One of the things that jumped out at me right away when I read your report was that you're saying that the market trend has shifted away from doing digital to being digital. Tell me what that means.
Sure, Ken. I would like to take you all back in the timeline to before pandemic when adopting digital was quite niche and sort of forward looking. Many enterprises have adopted cloud, AI, analytics those days and have portrayed themselves as industry leading. Those were the days when adopting digital was something quite differentiating. But during the pandemic, we saw that many enterprises struggled and they immediately adopted cloud, AI, and data driven approaches, that is, adopted digital to sustain and survive in a difficult environment. So, post pandemic, we see that there's a lot of adoption on digital, so everybody is doing digital. But being digital is more focused on human centric approaches. So, experiences that are quite focused on how personalized they are or how human centric they are. These are the few areas that we see there's a lot of traction, and that is what we say is being digital. We see most of the enterprises are baseline digital now, but being digital is integrating these digital technologies to provide differentiating experiences not only for their employees but also for end consumers.
So, if I understand correctly, doing digital is about the technology adoption and the focus around the specific technologies, whereas being digital seems to be a totally different mindset in how you approach your business. It interweaves technologies within your business model, and you just think about it in terms of how to leverage that technology as an integral part of your overall plan. Whereas doing digital, maybe just adding some things here and there. Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, it's perfectly spot on, Ken. And added to that, it is now focused not only on leveraging these technologies. Technologies were enablers, and the benefits that were focused on in the past were very specific, such as cost optimization, or you could say operational efficiency. Right now, we focus more on delivering experience to the end consumer, experience to the end client. So that's where the whole focus has shifted, not on focusing on just cost optimization but on providing value on broader ecosystem level.
Okay, Akila, based on what you've said, I would expect that there would be some significant growth in this space. Because there's an overall change, not just in technology, but also in mindset. What are you seeing in general down that road?
Yeah, in general, Ken, we do see that there is a lot of focus on being digital, adopting digital technologies, building in roadmaps so that to build applications around and how to deliver value on an ecosystem level. But the macroeconomic factors are definitely a dampener right now, and we do hope this recedes, and over a period of an year or two the adoption of these digital technologies will much more increase and more of innovation across, and a growth in delivering an end-to-end service mostly across the customer experience, supply chain, and ESG that will grow in an year or two. And we see a lot of ask from the enterprises, and we also see service providers building offerings around these things to deliver it for their customers.
This podcast series features interviews and information derived from ISG's Provider Lens reports, which detail practitioner led service provider comparisons empowered by ISG's advisory experience and data driven research. These reports offer independent vendor evaluations and purchase behavior segmentation. Provider positioning is based on a neutral and independent methodology. Provider participation is free of charge, but analysts evaluate all appropriate market players. To purchase the report featured in this podcast or to subscribe to the full series of ISG Provider Lens reports, please visit www.iplreports.com. Methodology information is available on the same page. Once again, that URL, iplreports.com. You mentioned customer experience a moment ago, and that's something that has really emerged on the scene of business dialogue these days. We're also seeing partner satisfaction, employee satisfaction, or partner experience, employee experience, things along those lines. Whereas in earlier days, everything was pretty much based on how things are impacting the bottom line. What do you think is changing sociologically in terms of how we approach business that is driving us in this direction?
It's more the mindset that is changing right now. We are no more focused on immediate returns. We are not no more focused on um, say very fixated thoughts. Now we more think about on how to design the customer experience also per se. There are agencies which specifically focus on these aspects, and we have service providers who have partnered these design agencies or acquired them to build the end-to-end customer journey. So the design on how the customer journey is built and how that is developed along with the provider's capabilities for the enterprise along with a human centered approach is something that has changed. So, specifically on the human centered approach, I would say that there's a lot more focus on delivering end to end CX journeys for the end clients. How to use the data driven applications to build that. So, it is more on delivering the customer experience for them rather than very much fixated on whether we have, sold X number of products or X number of, services for the end clients. The focus has shifted from being transactional to delivering experience not only on the front end side or the customer facing side, but entirely as an enterprise put together. So there's a very big drive on improving the partner experience, the employee experience, and thus delivering a very good customer experience for the end clients.
So we hear about things like the talent shortage, and of course, the world is just coming out of this whole COVID experience that's really disrupted everything for a period of a couple of years. How much are these things, and maybe other things as well, driving that need to pursue the experiential approach as opposed to more of a tactical sales footing?
There has been disruptions in the talent in the recent past, as we have seen. And we've also seen stages where there has been a very good focus on uptake of the talent in the market. I see that there is a lot of shift between from last year to this year along the talent space, not only in terms of hiring but also in terms of how the skill set is coached. There is no specific one skill set approach that has been taken. There are multiple skill sets that a employee needs to gain to deliver the digital experience or the digital application per se. While there has been a market turbulence in terms of hiring and layoffs, but there is also a huge focus across the service providers to train their employees on how to deliver multiple digital technologies for an enterprise, and thus build that experiential application for them.
So, Aquila, in order to penetrate the market, providers need a strong portfolio of all of these types of services, but they also need a lot of experience and understanding and the ability to deploy things like AI and analytics and security. And then, of course, there's IoT, and we know all that. But then we run into things like augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. Let's start here with the different types of realities. What are those, and how can the business decision maker get that around their heads?
So we see a lot of adoption, not to a great extent, but to a certain extent for virtual reality and augmented reality, and to a certain extent, the mixed reality. Uh, we definitely focus on there's a lot of focus across the manufacturing sector to improvise their processes using the virtual reality and augmented reality, and also to a certain extent on improvising the employee experience. While there has been small pockets of growth in certain areas for virtual reality and augmented reality, we also see that the complete adoption for this segment will take a little bit more time.
So, what's all this about VR, AR, and MR? Let's take a look at the alphabet soup, shall we? Virtual reality, or VR, is a fully immersive computer generated environment that replaces or blocks out the real world. This can be pre recorded computer generated experiences or interactive experiences that are based on how you respond. Augmented reality, or AR, superimposes digital information and objects onto the real world through the use of digital visual elements, sounds, or other stimuli delivered through the technology. This often involves special codes to trigger that function, or they might use a camera feed to detect and track the real world environment, thus allowing for the overlay of digital information and objects. Finally, mixed reality, or MR, is a hybrid of virtual reality and augmented reality that combines the virtual world and real world to create a single, seamless environment. This might include holograph like objects or the use of sensors to map the real world environment and allow the virtual objects to interact with physical objects in real time. Now, back to the interview. And how are you seeing enterprise decision makers, and even maybe getting down into the SME to a certain extent? How do you see businesses capitalizing on this? Could you give me some examples, maybe, or just a basic explanation of how they can take these types of things and fuse them together into something that contributes to business objectives?
Sure, definitely. For now, there's a lot of focus on improving the operational efficiency using the virtual reality and augmented reality, and that is where we see there's a lot of traction on adopting these technologies. And using these things, it eases the experience for the employees. It reduces the hazards in a shop floor. So there are a few focus areas that specifically we see a growth around, and in manufacturing, we do see on the shop floor that there's a lot of adoption on AR and VR to improve the employee experience.
Let's move to ESG for a moment, environmental, social, and governance services. This has become an important differentiator in digital transformation over the past year and maybe a little bit more. Tell me more about what those services look like in terms of ESG. What are people doing with it, and how can the impacts be measured?
ESG definitely has become a very important aspect, not only because there's a technology drive, but there is also a global awareness on the focus areas that we should be having to have a sustainable environment. Enterprises are measuring their carbon footprint, trying to understand how to reduce it or remediate it. Lot of enterprises that are focusing on being carbon neutral, that is one of the major focus areas what we see. Similarly, on the same lines, we also have service providers building offerings around it. It is not only on the carbon footprint that there is a focus on, there's also focus on the measuring, the risks around it, the governance around it, and also the social aspect on how ethical a product is when it is completely built. We've also seen that there's a lot of focus across the consumers also to learn and understand the products that they are buying are ethically sourced or not. So in across these areas there's a lot of drive on achieving very high ESG standards. So while there's a focus from the enterprises on being carbon neutral, we also have consumers who are focused on buying ethically sourced goods, and we have service provider helping their clients across the supply chain to measure the carbon footprint and also be ESG compliant based on their local rules, or also be innovative and plan for the future.
Okay, so I'm seeing kind of a double driver there. On the one hand, it's good for them over the long haul. On the other hand, it's what their customers are driving them to do because people are paying much closer attention to that than they once were. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Brand awareness is something that everybody is building on, and nowadays it is driven on ethically sourced aspects also, and there's a lot of push across from the consumers also.
So you've recently completed a report entitled Digital Business Enablement and ESG Services. Tell me a little bit about that report and what came out of this. What are some of the main things that really caught your attention moving forward?
The report focuses on customer experience, supply chain, and ESG. These are the three main aspects. What we see that there are a large growth on. What actually is quite differentiating this year is that even though there is a lot of changes across the macroeconomic scenario, there there are enterprises who are being advanced in digital per se. What I mean by that is, while majority of enterprises have focused and established their digital base, a lot of them are delivering or progressing more across their digital journey. We could call them digital innovators or moving towards the digital innovators, per se. So we see that there's a lot of shift in adopting technologies. There are difficulties in it because it is definitely not straightforward, just focused on application. It also involves a larger enterprise wide adoption of these technologies and change across processes too. So that is an area where we see that there's a growth, and that has been a important finding this year.
Here are a few things to keep in mind when selecting services to support digital transformation. Number one, providers must not only have a robust portfolio of services, they must also demonstrate their expertise in implementing digital technologies such as AI, analytics, security, IoT, augmented reality, and virtual reality. Number two, strong digital frameworks and customer experience frameworks are also necessary, as well as providing digital tools needed to bring everything to the next level. Number three, Expect them to have a strong innovation roadmap that involves clients and partners in developing new and niche capabilities. And expect them to take a highly human-centered approach with a focus on customer experience. Now, back to our discussion. So, Akhila, in the few moments we have left, summarize, if you will, what would you tell, and this is my standard question on all of these podcasts, what would you tell your best friend who was looking at these types of services about how best to navigate the options and be able to connect the dots with how those options meet their specific needs?
Sure, definitely. I would take that on two aspects, Ken. First, on the consumer aspect, some of my friends are really digitally savvy, and they would like to explore digital applications. For them, it's really bright. There's a lot of different kind of services around. I would say, please go out and try them. And for the enterprises who are building these, you the market has changed, and there's a very high focus on looking for a digital partner who would help them in this journey. So when enterprises are selecting their service provider, I would advise them to not only focus on the standard aspects of the contract, but also try and understand if the provider understands their business priorities, and if they understand their business culture, on how they work within their environment, and how they deliver their service for their end clients. So that is a very big focus on finding the right business partner in terms of delivering technology is a very important aspect.
Akhila Harinarayan, Principal Analyst of ISG's report on digital business enablement and ESG services. Thank you so much for your time. This is really one of those game-changing things, and I mean, we talk about that a lot in the tech space, but this truly is a new way of looking at the business world and leveraging technology. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for peering beyond the lens, an ISG podcast featuring interviews and information derived from ISG's Provider Lens reports, featuring independent vendor evaluations and purchase behavior segmentation from throughout the IT industry. I'm your host, Ken Presti. To purchase the report featured in this podcast or to subscribe to the full series of ISG Provider Lens reports, please visit iplreports.com. That URL again, iplreports.com.